I see that PlusNarrative has banned internal emails. Why is that?
Okay, so we haven't necessarily banned internal emails. This isn't like an on and off rule, but the way that I would describe it is we discourage email internally. And I suppose the main reason for that is I've never met anybody who actually enjoys receiving an email. I don't know if you have.
No.
And we do have a lot of email communication outside of the organization, because it's the one thing that we have in common with a lot of the clients that we work with, even suppliers that we work with, in some cases, is everybody has email. But it feels like email was invented, or perhaps even just stumbled upon, and it kind of took over the world of communication, and it doesn't feel like it's very good at it. So email as a platform and a channel of communication is what we would call asynchronous communication. So asynchronous communication being I send it to you, you receive it, like receiving a letter in the mail, like snail mail, sending it through the post office. Mm-hmm. You're going to get that communication and then you're able to send something back to me. Asynchronous communication has everything good going for it, in my opinion, because you have to kind of really think about what you're trying to communicate. But the problem is there's different levels of communication that are often required, and email has ended up taking up all of them for the average person, in the knowledge economy. So what we've got is people trying to send a quick email, hey, I need this, like it's a message. We've got people trying to have full-on discussions, so backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards, and then
Those
all
long
over.
meters and meters and meters of email thread, those are the best.
Yeah,
We love those.
yeah. So hundreds of emails, backwards and forwards, and then we've even got in cases where you'd put out, what would be called a memo, in our sort of environment, or like a some form of a guide where you're saying to people, this is how things work, around here, and you're kind of typing it all out in a mail. So there's different levels, of communication. And we were really inspired by Automatic around this. They've published a lot of information, Automatic being the company that started the WordPress.org, WordPress.com. In the process of working with WordPress a lot and getting heavily inspired by the way that Matt Mullenweg runs WordPress and their form of asynchronous communication that they've opted to, we were quite inspired by them. And if I'm brutally honest, I just didn't want to receive any more emails. And we were getting loads of internal emails. And I thought, well, one way that I could do that is by saying to everybody, hey, this isn't working, let's try a different way. Because I'm pretty sure everybody felt the same way, back when email was our main form of communication. So we use Slack. We've invested in Slack as an organization. We've got around 30 people every day, engaging with Slack, and about 40 people in total in the Slack environment, who don't necessarily engage every day. And we found that is the best way to have conversational discussions, quick discussions where we kind of type it out. We've ended up documenting a lot of our communication. So we either record like video discussions, if we do have some form of a call, whether it's an all hands call or, even in some cases project team discussions, we'll record that so it's available. Nowadays that's really easy to just transcribe automatically, an AI kind of just types that out for you. So that's great. And that's how we've combated, the non-asynchronous stuff, the synchronous communication, like just discussing it between us. This is being recorded, as an example. But conversational information and published information communication, we tend to rely on Slack for the conversational stuff, and we tend to, in terms of publication, we tend to write documentation for that. We use Google Docs a lot. You've seen that. We tend to revert to a Google Doc or a Google slide deck, and then that way all of that information is in one place and it can be then published out to the team. It's not to say that email doesn't work at all. I think email is okay when it's bridging the gap, and because we still have to use email when it comes to a lot of our clients, because that's what they use, and so we have to compromise on that. What we've tended to say is, instead of sending a formal email internally, because it feels very formal now to send an email, and you can see already what that kind of does, in terms of behavior. Put it on Slack. Let's start a discussion. And then we added another layer to that. We don't have, we try to discourage just direct one-on-one communication on Slack. And the reason for that is it's very much like email. When you're getting a message from somebody, just an individual, you're kind of, all your evolutionary signals about this person needs me, this person needs me, kind of go off, and it just creates a little bit more anxiety and a bit more stress in your day, even if it's micro kind of stresses or micro anxiety. We want to try to avoid that. So what we encourage is messaging in a channel where the people who are available to you, not everybody's online all the time, somebody's doing deep work, somebody's coding, somebody's programming the next application or designing the next prototype. Whoever is available it might be able to answer that question and to help you. And we do that in project teams, in channels on Slack. So that's the way that we've kind of done it. We haven't necessarily banned internal email, but we've discouraged it, and it didn't take much. This isn't something we've had to police or ask people to do, really. As soon as Slack is available to the team kind of realizes quite quickly, and it's just one line in our handbook that says, rather than email, just go ahead and use Slack, and everybody seems to just do it. Another kind of important thing to mention is that Slack is always opt-in communication. There might be some social pressure if there's a whole bunch of people engaging, but email's not. Email, it just kind of piles up on your desk, on your desktop or in your inbox. That inbox just keeps piling up with information and with new things coming at you. Whereas Slack, even though, I wouldn't say it's perfect, even though you've got a series of potential notifications that are coming at you, you could disable those, and you've got a series of channels that are kind of lighting up and you can see that there's activity. You don't have to necessarily engage in everything because it's not necessarily directed straight at you. When you get a DM, on Slack, a direct message, or you get tagged, you might know that that's for you. And, hopefully the etiquette that we've created in our environment means that you're not just constantly getting tagged in everything. That's the next kind of journey to go on and help people to realize that just because it's the person you think needs to give you the information, that might not be the person who replies, in terms of the communication flow and the information flow. One thing I've really enjoyed about the way that we communicate as a distributed team, as a team that's currently not in the office, is that written communication has to be really, really clear. And we should probably be trying different channels of communication and not always the same thing. So we lean quite heavily on Slack. I suppose the next kind of chapter is to work out other ways of communicating, information. So we're using Confluence, as an example. It's a Jira or Atlassian product that we're leaning on a little bit for documenting, the dev process. The dev backlog, is on ClickUp, and that's another means of communication. We've got a whole bunch of tasks essentially sitting in ClickUp, which we're trialing at the moment now, which is a project management software. So we're not just going to one, source of communication or one channel for communication, and sometimes the same stuff is mentioned on, in different channels, and sometimes you can get them all to kind of work and communicate with each other. So that's something that we're learning and we're experimenting and trying to adapt to.